The ocean had always hidden its secrets well. Deep beneath the crushing black of the Mariana Trench, where no light dared to linger, something stirred. The seafloor trembled, fissures splitting open like wounds in the earth. From the abyssal darkness, a shape emerged, massive, ancient, and hungry. It had slept for millennia, buried under layers of sediment and time, but now something had called it forth. A shift in the currents, a disturbance in the deep. Or perhaps something far older in instinct, a command written in its blood. The creature's body unfurled, limbs stretching, muscles coiling beneath armored flesh. Its hide was a nightmare tapestry of scarred plates and jagged spines, each ridge a relic of forgotten battles. Gills flared, filtering the cold water as its lungs remembered the taste of air. Then it moved. The first sign of its ascent was the death throes of the deep-sea ecosystem. Schools of bioluminescent fish scattered in terror, their fragile bodies crushed in the wake of the beast's passing. A colossal squid, one of the ocean's last great predators, lashed out with hooked tentacles only to be severed in a single bite, ink and viscera clouding the water. The pressure mounted as the thing rose, faster now, driven by a hunger that had slept for eons. Ships far above registered the disturbance sonar blips. Seismic spikes, but by then, it was too late.
Ow.
The surface shattered. Water exploded upward as the beast breached, its silhouette blotting out the sun. Salt spray rained down like a storm as it loomed over a fishing vessel, the crew frozen in horror. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the screams began. The first swipe of its talons split the boat in half, wood and steel splintering like kindling. Men tumbled into the churning waves only to be swallowed whole by the creature's maw, their blood staining the sea crimson. It did not roar, did not revel in the slaughter it simply consumed, its yellowed eyes reflecting no mercy, only purpose. By the time the last of the wreckage sank, the beast was already moving. Toward the coast, toward the cities. The first kaiju had awakened, and the world was not ready. The first images were blurry, distorted by panic and the violent churn of the sea. A fishing vessel's last transmission screams, the groan of twisting metal, then static. The data feeds caught only glimpses, a monstrous silhouette rising from the depths. A wake of destruction, spreading like a bloodstain across the ocean. By the time governments acknowledged the threat, it was already too late. Coastal cities buzzed with uneasy life, unaware of the nightmare closing in. News outlets dismissed the rumors as hoaxes, maritime accidents, anything but the truth. The creature moved with terrifying speed, its path marked by ruined ships and floating carnage. A Japanese whaling crew recorded its approach, a towering wall of scaled flesh, its barnacle-crusted and bleeding from ancient wounds. Then the camera cut to black. Panic arrived in waves. First the fishermen, then the military. Radars painted the beast's approach, but no protocol existed for something this massive, this unstoppable. Fighter jets scrambled from Okinawa, their pilots' voices tight with disbelief. "What the hell is that?" one whispered before the order came to engage. Missiles streaked through the sky, detonating against the creature's hide in blossoms of fire. It barely flinched. The beast's skin absorbed the explosions like stone weathering rain, its eyes locking onto the distant coastline. One jet swooped to low a mistake. Spined tail lashed out, shearing through the aircraft like paper. The pilot didn't even have time to eject before the ocean swallowed him in a plume of smoke and flame. On shore, civilians finally saw it. A shadow on the horizon growing larger. The water receded, sucked into the beast's wake, before crashing back in a tsunami of froth and debris. People ran, but there was nowhere to go. The first districts hit, where the dock's warehouses collapsed under the creature's weight. Shipping containers crushed like tin cans. Blood misted the air as its claws raked through crowds, bodies flung aside like broken dolls. A news helicopter captured the moment it reached the city. Buildings trembled as it strode forward, its footsteps seismic. A traffic jam became a slaughterhouse. Cars were flattened underfoot, their occupants reduced to pulp between twisted metal. Creature's maw gaped, rows of serrated teeth glistening. And a shopping mall vanished in a single bite, screams cut short by the wet crunch of bone. Governments issued frantic evacuation orders, but evacuation required time. Time the world no longer had. The first kaiju had come. and humanity had nothing that could stop it. The city burned in its wake. Smoke choked the sky, turning dawn into a sickly twilight. The beast moved with deliberate, terrifying purpose, each step cracking concrete, each breath rattling the skeletons of skyscrapers. It did not roar, it did not pause, it simply consumed. Emergency sirens wailed, their useless screams drowned beneath the thunder of collapsing buildings. People scrambled over each other in the streets, their terror a living thing. A mother clutched her child to her chest, stumbling over a curb slick with blood and broken glass. Behind her, the creature's shadow swallowed the street hole, then contact. The first tank division rolled in, barrels gleaming under Fire Street skies. Orders crackled over radios, voices tight with fear masquerading as command. The lead tank fired. The shell struck the beast's knee, exploding in a burst of flame and shrapnel. It didn't even stumble. The creature turned its massive head, eyes like pits of molten gold locking onto the armored vehicles. Its tail swung a blur of spined muscleland. The first tank crumpled like a beer can, its crew reduced to paste inside their steel coffin. Another tank fired, then another, shells pocking the monster's hide with bursts of fire that left only blackened scars. It retaliated. One massive hand swept down, crushing a tank beneath its claws, hydraulic fluid and blood spurting between its fingers. Soldiers abandoned their vehicles, sprinting for cover that didn't exist. The creature's foot came down, pulping 3 men into the pavement with a wet crunch. A helicopter gunship swooped in, miniguns roaring, bullets stitching across the beast's face. It blinked, irritated, then swatted the aircraft from the sky. The explosion rained fire and shrapnel over the fleeing crowds. A brave squad of infantry fired rifles, their bullets bouncing harmlessly off thick hide. The creature exhaled a guttural, grinding sound and lowered its head. A glistening, mucus-lined throat pulsed. Then, with a sound like tearing flesh, it spat. A torrent of steaming, acidic bile drenched the soldiers. Their screams didn't last long. Flesh sloughed from bone, uniforms melting into skin, eyes boiling in their sockets. The liquid ate through the street, bubbling and hissing, leaving behind only skeletons and liquefied organs. The beast moved on. Behind it, the city was a graveyard. Ahead, more cities, more blood. Humanity had made first contact, and it was losing. The beast left no survivors, only witnesses. Those who escaped its wrath did so by accident, spared not by mercy, but by the sheer randomness of destruction. They huddled in shattered subway tunnels, their ears ringing with the screams of the dying. They crouched behind overturned buses, watching as the monster carved its name into the city with claws and teeth and acid. A hospital stood in its path. The creature's foot came down on the west wing first, the building collapsing like a sandcastle beneath a boot. Patients in their beds vanished under tons of rubble, for bags bursting, monitors flatlining. Doctors and nurses scrambled, pushing gurneys through corridors that trembled with each of the beast's steps. Maternity wards shook, newborns wailing as the ceiling cracked open. Darkness. Fire raged through the ruins, thick black smoke coiling into the sky. The beast's tail lashed out, shearing the hospital's main tower in half. Bodies rained down, some still alive until they hit the ground with wet final thuds. A lone nurse, her scrubs soaked in blood, dragged a child through the wreckage. She didn't see the shadow above her until it was too late. The creature's claw came down, and then there was nothing left to scream. Beyond the hospital, the financial district fared no better. Glass skyscrapers shattered under the beast's weight, their glittering facades exploding into deadly hail. Office workers leaped from windows rather than be crushed. The streets became rivers of blood and broken glass, the monster wading through them like a god of ruin. A traffic jam at the bridge became a charnel house. Cars burned, their occupants trapped inside, flesh melting against seatbelts. The creature stepped onto the bridge, its weight too much for the straining concrete. With a groan of twisting metal, the structure collapsed, sending hundreds of vehicles plunging into the river below. Those who survived the fall drowned, their hands slapping uselessly against sinking car roofs. The beast moved on, its hunger unsated. Behind it, the city was a tomb, and the world watched in horror. The world's armies mobilized in a frenzy of steel and fire. Pentagon war rooms glowed with satellite images of the creature's path. A scar of devastation stretching from coastline to heartland, generals barked orders into headsets, their faces lit by the cold blue light of tactical screens. The president's authorization came through in clipped tones. Maximum force authorized. No restrictions. At dawn, the sky screamed with engines. Fighter squadrons descended like angry hornets, their missile trails painting the morning sky white. The first volley struck the beast's shoulders in a chain of explosions that sent chunks of its armored hide raining down onto the city below. The creature staggered, the first time it had shown anything resembling pain. A cheer rose from command centers. It's quickly silenced as the beast's wounds began steaming, flesh knitting together before their eyes. On the ground, armored divisions rolled through ruined suburbs. Abrams tanks formed firing lines, their 120mm cannons roaring in unison. The creature turned its massive head, eyes reflecting the flames, and charged. Tanks flipped like toys under its bulk, their crews screaming as hydraulic fluid mixed with blood in the wreckage. One soldier fired his sidearm uselessly until a falling claw turned him into red mist. The air smelled of cordite and burning flesh. From offshore, naval guns thundered. 16-inch shells from battleships arced through the sky, each impact shaking the earth like an earthquake. The creature roared finally, truly wounded, as one shell tore through its flank, spraying black ichor across 3 city blocks. The viscous fluid burned through concrete, through steel, through the flesh of unlucky infantrymen caught in the deluge. Their agonized shrieks lasted just seconds before dissolving into gurgles. Then the beast did something unexpected. It dove. Massive limbs propelled it forward with terrifying speed, straight toward the coastline. Satellites tracked its movement as it disappeared beneath the waves, heading for the fleet. The last transmission from the USS Michelson was a sonar operator's panicked shout. Before the ship was rammed from below, its hull splitting like kindling. One by one, the fleet's icons blinked out on radar screens. In the sudden silence, generals exchanged grim looks. Their best weapons had failed. The beast was learning. The war room screens flickered with autopsy footage of the creature's flesh samples. The images casting a sickly green pallor across Dr. Eleanor Voss's exhausted face. 3 days without sleep had left her eyes bloodshot, her hands trembling around the tablet that held humanity's possible extinction. The black ichor in the petri dish before her pulsed faintly, as if remembering its host. Across the lab, a marine biologist vomited into a trash can. The samples were alive in ways that defied biology. Voss's fingers danced across holographic displays, piecing together the nightmare. The creature's cellular structure was ancient, impossibly so. Carbon dating placed its origins in the Precambrian era, a time when life on Earth was nothing but microbes in primordial soup. Yet its DNA showed signs of deliberate engineering, strands twisted into configurations no natural evolution could explain. God doesn't make mistakes like this, she whispered to the empty lab. The security cameras whirred in response. Her theory emerged like a tumor growing in the dark. This was no accident of nature. The creature's biology was too perfect, its regenerative capabilities too precise. The way it targeted population centers while ignoring forests and wildlife suggested purpose. The way its blood dissolved steel but left organic matter untouched screamed design. When the military finally came for her report, they found Voss surrounded by corpses, not human ones. Dozens of lab animals lay dissected on stainless steel tables, their bodies displaying grotesque mutations. A rabbit with translucent skin, its organs visible and pulsing. Rats with extra limbs growing from their backs, their eyes milky white. The air reeked of formaldehyde and something darker, something metallic and wrong. Voss didn't look up from her microscope. It's changing them, she said. The samples. They're rewriting DNA on contact. The colonel in the doorway paled as a mutated rat twitched on its table, its new claws scraping against steel. Outside, thunder rumbled, or perhaps it was distant artillery. Voss finally turned, her face illuminated by the glowing mutation charts. We're not dealing with an animal, she said. We're dealing with a weapon, and it's just getting started. Somewhere in the distance, a city burned. Deep beneath the ocean's crushing darkness, where no light had ever penetrated, the truth waited. Satellites had missed it. Sonar had glided over its edges. But now, with the beast's path of destruction leading inexorably toward this precise coordinate, the ancient structure revealed itself. A monolith of black stone, covered in barnacles and etched with symbols that hurt the eyes to study. The water around it shimmered with unnatural heat, fish floating belly up in concentric circles of death. The beast reached out with one massive claw, brushing the structure's surface. The ocean trembled. On the surface, Dr. Voss's monitors exploded with data. The creature's vital signs spiked as the monolith responded, glowing fissures spreading across its surface like awakening veins. The water boiled for miles around, ships' hulls melting as their crews boiled alive inside. A geyser of superheated water erupted skyward, carrying with it fragments of something impossible, more monoliths, each identical to the first. The beast threw back its head and screamed, not in pain, in recognition. The sound shattered windows in coastal cities 50 miles away. People clutched their ears as blood trickled from ruptured eardrums. Those who looked toward the sea in that moment would swear they saw the water itself recoil, pulling back from the shore in terrified retreat. Voss's hand shook as she pieced together the fragments of data. The creature wasn't destroying randomly. Each city it had leveled, each path it had taken, formed a perfect geometric pattern when mapped. The monoliths were nodes. The beast was the key. And it was almost done. As the last glowing fissure completed its circuit across the primary monolith, the beast turned its gaze inland once more. Its eyes, twin pools of ancient malice, reflected the fires of burning cities. It had one final destination, one final purpose. And nothing, no army, no weapon, no desperate plea would stop it. The world fractured like glass under pressure. As the beast carved its path of annihilation toward the last monolith, humanity turned on itself. Governments collapsed under the weight of their failures. Cities descended into anarchy, their streets running red with more than just kaiju blood. The creature's purpose had become clear, and in its wake, mankind revealed its true nature. Some worshipped it. Cults emerged from the ruins, their followers clad in robes stitched from human skin. They gathered in the beast's footprints, drinking rainwater mixed with its black ichor. Their bodies twisted spines, elongating, teeth sharpening as the creature's biology rewrote them. In Tokyo, 1,000 converts threw themselves beneath its claws. Their screams of ecstasy cut short as massive feet reduced them to crimson paste. Their blood steamed where it touched the kaiju's hide, forming strange hieroglyphs that glowed briefly before fading. Others sought to control it. Deep in bunkers beneath the Alps, generals pored over Dr. Voss's research. Their scalpel-wielding scientists worked feverishly, injecting prisoners with synthesized kaiju cells. The results were messy. Test subjects burst like overripe fruit, their remains slithering across laboratory floors with unnatural life. One particularly promising specimen lasted 17 seconds before its skull split open, revealing a nest of writhing tendrils that strangled 3 guards before being incinerated. The desperate fought back. In Shanghai, a suicide brigade strapped nuclear warheads to their backs, died screaming through melted lungs as they detonated within the beast's shadow. The explosion peeled flesh from its bones for 3 glorious minutes. The world held its breath, and the creature regenerated, its new skin gleaming wetly under the radioactive sun. And the indifferent fled. Billionaires launched themselves into orbit on private rockets, their precious cargo holds filled with art and wine instead of scientists. One such ship malfunctioned at 60,000 feet, its burning wreckage raining down on a refugee camp below. The survivors didn't even look up as they continued their hopeless march away from Ground Zero. Through it all, the kaiju marched on, unstoppable, unconcerned, a force of nature. Carving through a species that had forgotten its place in the food chain, the beast's wake had become a pilgrimage route of carnage. From the air, its path was unmistakably a jagged scar of destruction cutting across continents. Cities reduced to smoldering grids of rubble, forests flattened into fields of splintered timber, rivers running black with a toxic slurry of blood, oil, and something far worse. The creature moved with terrifying purpose now, its massive body carving through geography like a scalpel through flesh. Ground Zero teams found horrors waiting in its footprints. At Site Gamma, where the kaiju had paused to drink from a poisoned reservoir, the water had taken on a viscous, gelatinous quality. Fish floated belly up, their scales melted away to reveal pulsating new organs beneath. A team in hazmat suits documented the phenomenon until one researcher's gloves tore. His scream lasted 17 minutes as his fingers fused together, the bones inside writhing like snakes beneath his skin. Site Delta smelled of rotting meat and ozone. Here, the beast had shed a plate of its armor, a chunk of keratinous, hide the size of a football field. Scientists who touched it without protection found their nervous systems rewiring themselves. One man's tongue split down the middle as he tried to report his findings. Another's eyes liquefied, yet he kept seeing visions of ancient oceans and things that moved in the darkness between stars. The most disturbing discovery came at Site Epsilon. A pocket of survivors had emerged from their bunker directly in the creature's path. Their bodies were changing. Skin hardening into chitinous plates, fingers elongating into claws. They attacked the rescue teams with unnatural strength, their mouths leaking the same black ichor that flowed in the kaiju's veins. The last transmission from Epsilon showed a soldier's helmet cam footages, own squad mate's face, splitting open like a blooming flower of teeth and tendrils before static consumed the signal. Satellite imagery revealed the terrible truth. Every place the beast had touched was becoming wrong. Vegetation grew in impossible spirals. Water flowed uphill. The laws of physics themselves seemed to bend around these zones of contamination. And at the center of each, a pulsing, organic structure growing from the spilled ichor, like a tumorous replica of the ocean monoliths. The kaiju wasn't just destroying, it was terraforming. And its final destination loomed on the horizon, the last unactivated monolith buried beneath the Siberian permafrost. As the creature crossed into Russian airspace, the ground ahead of it began to tremble in anticipation. The world held its breath as the final solution took shape. Deep within the Cheyenne Mountain complex, a device of last resort pulsed with lethal promise. Scientists called it Project Lazarus, a tectonic destabilization weapon designed to fracture continents. Originally conceived for Cold War deterrence, its purpose now was singular: to swallow the beast in the planet's burning mantle. Above ground, the diversionary force assembled. Thousands of soldiers, some in powered exoskeletons. Others in jury-rigged mechanized suits formed the largest armored column since World War II. Their weapons glistened with experimental toxins, their eyes hollow with the knowledge of certain death. Among them marched the volunteers, men and women injected with concentrated kaiju cells, their bodies already sprouting bony protrusions and extra joints. They shambled rather than walked, their blood blackening in their veins, but their weapons never trembled. The beasts sensed their approach. As the first battalions crossed into Siberia, the ground itself revolted. Permafrost cracked open like rotten fruit, spewing geysers of methane and older, fouler gases. The creature emerged from this hellish mist, its body now studded with crystalline growths that refracted light into deadly prismatic beams. Where these beams touched flesh, soldiers burst into flames that burned blue and cold. The volunteers charged first. Their mutated bodies withstood the beams long enough to reach the beast's feet. They detonated in waves, their enhanced biology becoming shrapnel that actually drew blood. Black ichor rained down, melting through tanks and flesh alike. One soldier, his face half dissolved, managed to plunge a vibranium-tipped spear into the creature's ankle, before being crushed underfoot. Then came the real attack. From orbit, 47 kinetic rods screamed through the atmosphere. Each tungsten projectile hit with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The beast staggered as its spine cracked audibly, the first true injury it had sustained. Its roar shook satellites from their orbits. In that moment of vulnerability, Project Lazarus activated. The ground beneath the kaiju liquefied. Tectonic plates groaned as the weapon did its work, creating a sinkhole 5 miles across. The creature thrashed as the earth swallowed it whole, its claws gouging canyons in a futile attempt to anchor itself. For 3 glorious minutes it seemed to work. Then the screaming started. Not from the pit, from the operators of Project Lazarus. Their bodies convulsed as the mountain around them pulsed like a living heart. The walls sprouted vein-like tendrils that burrowed into flesh. Deep underground, something had awakened, and it was angry. The ocean boiled where the beast had fallen. For 3 days, the world watched the churning maelstrom wear project. Lazarus had dragged the creature into the planet's depths. Satellites showed only swirling darkness, sonar pulses returning garbled echoes that made technicians recoil from their screens. Then, on the morning of the 4th day, the sea went still. Dr. Voss knew before the alarm sounded. Her monitors displayed impossible readings, seismic signature rising from the Mariana Trench, growing stronger with each passing second. The water temperature spiked 40 degrees in minutes, cooking alive every living thing for miles. When the first tendrils broke the surface, they weren't the beast's limbs, but something worse. The monoliths were moving. Gigantic pillars of black stone rose from the deep, their surfaces now pulsing with bioluminescent veins. Between them stretched a web of glistening tissue, a living bridge of flesh and bone forming across the ocean. The beast emerged transformed, its body now fused with the monolith's substance. Crystalline growths erupting from its back like a crown of jagged spines. Voss's hands trembled as she deciphered the new data. The truth unfolded in horrific clarity. The monoliths weren't structures, they were limbs. The creature wasn't some ancient weapon. It was a key, and it had just unlocked the door. Beneath the waves, something stirred, something vast. The water itself seemed to recoil as a shape began to rise, an outline so enormous it dwarfed continents. The beast threw back its head and screamed, not in challenge, but in worship. On shorelines around the world, the water began retreating, exposing miles of seafloor crusted with barnacles that hadn't existed yesterday. The air smelled of rotting shellfish and copper. Birds fell dead from the sky by the millions. Humanity had never been the target. It'd merely been in the way. The last armies of Earth gathered on the shores of a dying world. What remained of humanity's military forces converged on the Indonesian archipelago, the final landmass between the awakening horror and the rest of the planet. The beaches were littered with the wreckage of previous battles, rusted tanks and bleached bones forming a grim welcome for the new defenders. Above them, the sky had taken on a sickly violet hue. The air thick with the stench of rotting seaweed and something far more alien. The beast came at dawn. It emerged from the toxic surf transformed, its body now half fused with the monolith's black stone. Pulsating veins of blue energy coursing beneath its armored hide. The ocean behind it boiled as titanic shapes moved in the depths. The first stirrings of something unimaginably vast beginning its ascent. Artillery roared to life first. Shells tore chunks of flesh from the creature's body, only for the wounds to seal instantly with a viscous, glowing mucus. Fighter jets screamed overhead, their missiles striking the crystalline growths along the kaiju's spine. One pilot managed to plunge her aircraft directly into the beast's eye. The explosion sent a shower of molten ichor raining down on the defenders, melting through flesh and steel alike. Then the true horror began. From the creature's wounds emerged swarms of writhing tendrils, each tipped with barbed mouths. They lashed out like whips, impaling soldiers and lifting them screaming into the air before draining them dry. A battalion of powered armor units activated their plasma blades and charged. Their heroic last stand lasted 17 seconds before being crushed. Beneath the kaiju's talons, Dr. Voss watched from a command bunker as her life's work flashed across the monitors. There, in the creature's genetic code, she saw it. The flaw, the weakness. A single point of vulnerability where the monolith's energy interfaced with biological matter. She grabbed the comms unit with shaking hands. Target the glowing fissure at its throat. Her voice cracked with desperation. Everything you have now. The nuclear strike came from the last remaining submarine. The missile struck true, detonating directly in the creature's wound. For a terrible moment, the kaiju blazed like a second sun, its flesh peeling away in great glowing strips. Then the shockwave hit, flattening everything for miles. When the firestorm cleared, the beast stood motionless, its body frozen mid-roar, the light in its eyes fading to black. Silence fell across the battlefield. Then, from the depths, came a sound that froze the blood of every survivor, a moan of cosmic anguish as the awakening horror beneath the waves recoiled. The ocean itself seemed to shudder as the vast presence began to withdraw, the monoliths crumbling to dust as their connections severed. The first kaiju was dead, but the sea still remembered what slept below. The corpse of the beast became humanity's greatest shrine and deepest nightmare. Its mountainous body lay where it fell, half submerged in the toxic shallows, flesh hardening into a jagged peninsula of bone and scar tissue. The ocean refused to claim it. Waves broke against the carcass and retreated, as if repelled by some unseen force. Within days, the first changes became apparent. The blood pooling around the body didn't coagulate, spread, seeping into the earth with purposeful hunger. Plants that drank from these blackened pools grew thorns like surgical steel, their roots squirming like living things. Animals that fed on the mutated vegetation gave birth to malformed young crows with too many eyes. Rats with human-like hands, their tiny fingers clutching at the air. Dr. Voss walked through this newborn hellscape in a light-lined hazmat suit, her Geiger counter clicking rhythmically. The readings made no sense. Radiation signatures that fluctuated between impossible isotopes. Temperatures that dropped suddenly in perfect spheres of frost. The corpse's gaping throat wound, she found the most disturbing transformation. The flesh inside had reconfigured itself into something resembling a temple. Rib bones arched like cathedral buttresses, their surfaces carved with the same symbols as the monoliths. The walls pulsed with a slow, sick rhythm, dripping thick fluid that burned through her boot when she stepped too close. Deeper within, shadows moved, not cast by any light source, but existing independently, twisting in patterns that hurt to observe for too long. Across the world, the changes spread. In hospitals, newborns opened eyes that shone with unnatural bioluminescence. Deep in mine shafts, workers reported hearing something massive moving through bedrock that should have been solid. Fishermen dragged up nets full of fish with human teeth, their gills fluttering with whispered words in dead languages. Voss stood at the shore one final night, watching the moonlight reflect off the beast's glassy hide. The water trembled, though no wind blew. Far out at sea, something breached the surface's spine. Or perhaps a tower, too distant to discern clearly. It lingered for only a moment before submerging again. She removed her helmet, letting the poisoned air fill her lungs. The victory had been an illusion. The first kaiju was dead, but its echo would live forever.